"What do I do now?" I inquired, my voice barely steady. Harrison smiled, and for the first time since Robert's death, I witnessed genuine warmth directed toward me. "Now, my dear, we contact the police regarding the fraud, and then we call Victoria and inform her that she's about to receive the shock of her life. Can she contest this? With what funds? She's about to discover that every account she believes she controlled actually belongs to you. Every investment, every bank account, every asset except your house is frozen, pending investigation of her fraudulent activities. I envisioned Victoria in my house, likely already planning renovations, shopping for new furnishings with money she presumed was hers. Kevin was probably calculating the impact of the inheritance on his investment portfolio. They had no inkling that in approximately 6 hours, their entire world was destined to implode. Harrison Fitzgerald's office transformed into Command Central for what he jovially termed Operation Justice. He contacted the police, the banks, and a private investigator while I sat in his leather chair, still processing the immense scale of Victoria's deception. "The forged documents are quite sophisticated," Detective Rodriguez explained as she examined the fake will Victoria had shown me. "This wasn't an impulsive crime. Someone meticulously planned this." "You think Victoria had assistance?" I asked. "Almost certainly. Crafting convincing legal forgeries requires specialized knowledge and connections. We'll need to investigate whether Kevin or someone in his financial network was involved." Within 2 hours, every account had been frozen. Victoria's credit cards, linked to what she believed were her new inheritance accounts, were declined. The house utilities, which she had already transferred to her name, were suspended pending ownership verification. My phone rang at precisely 3:47 p.m. Victoria's name illuminated the screen. "Mom, where are you? There's some kind of mix-up with the bank accounts. They're claiming Daddy's assets are frozen." "Hello, Victoria. I'm currently in Harrison Fitzgerald's office. You remember him? Daddy's attorney, the one who read the real will to an empty room while you informed him I was traveling." Silence then. "Mom, I don't know what you imagine you've uncovered, but I've uncovered that you're a liar and a thief. Sweetheart, I've also discovered that your father was far more astute than either of us realized. You don't understand. I was safeguarding you from the complexities of managing all that money. You've never had to deal with investments." "Oh, I understand perfectly. You forged legal documents, committed fraud, and ejected your 67-year-old mother from her own home because you presumed I was too foolish to notice." Her voice turned sharp, desperate. "Mom, you're confused. The grief has been overwhelming, and someone is clearly exploiting your emotional state." The audacity was breathtaking. Even caught red-handed, Victoria was attempting to manipulate me. "Victoria, dear, allow me to clarify something for you. Not only did you never inherit anything, but your actual inheritance, the $10 million your father left you, is now mine as well, thanks to a thoughtful clause he included about treating me with dignity and respect. That's impossible. Detective Rodriguez is seated right here if you'd like to discuss the impossibility of fraud charges with her." The phone went silent. I could almost hear Victoria's mind racing, calculating, searching for an angle. "Mom, please, can we meet somewhere and discuss this rationally? I'm sure we can resolve something." "Oh, we'll definitely be meeting soon, at the courthouse, when you're arraigned. You wouldn't dare press charges against your own daughter." Something cold and definitive solidified in my chest. "Watch me." I hung up and glanced at Harrison, who was beaming with approval. "How long before she's apprehended?" "Detective Rodriguez possesses sufficient evidence for a warrant. They'll pick her up this evening. And Kevin? His financial records are being subpoenaed. If he participated in creating those documents, he'll also face charges." My phone vibrated with a text from Victoria. "Mom, please don't do this. Think about the grandchildren." I showed the message to Detective Rodriguez, who smiled grimly. Emotional manipulation, a classic behavioral pattern for this type of crime. I typed back, "I am thinking about them. They deserve to witness what transpires when you steal from family." 20 minutes later, Kevin called. "Margaret, surely we can resolve this privately. Victoria made some poor decisions, but involving the police seems excessive." "Kevin, did you assist her in forging those documents?" That's not. Margaret, you have to comprehend the pressure Victoria was under. She was concerned about your mental state, your capacity to handle large sums of money. So, that's a yes. It wasn't malicious. She genuinely believed she was protecting you. By throwing me out of my house and instructing me to find somewhere to die? Kevin was silent. Kevin, here's what's going to happen. You're both going to be arrested. You're both going to face federal fraud charges. And I'm going to be sitting in my house, watching it all unfold. Margaret, please be reasonable. I was reasonable for 43 years. It didn't work out well for me. The police apprehended Victoria at 8:30 p.m. while she was dining at Le Bernardin, apparently celebrating her inheritance with Kevin and another couple. According to Detective Rodriguez, she shrieked about false arrest and demanded to contact her lawyer, who turned out to be Kevin's golf partner and lacked any experience in criminal law. Kevin was arrested at his office the following morning. The forensic accountant had traced the forged documents to a printing company Kevin's firm utilized for creating fraudulent investment prospectuses. Apparently, my son-in-law possessed quite a criminal record that Victoria either was unaware of or chose to disregard. I spent my first night back in my house in 43 years, sleeping in the master bedroom. Victoria had already relocated her belongings into the space, replacing Robert's meticulous organization with her chaotic assortment of designer clothes and expensive cosmetics. I packed everything into garbage bags and left them on the front porch. Let her retrieve them when she makes bail. The house felt different now, not because Robert was gone, but because I was finally perceiving it as mine. For decades, I had maintained it as Robert's sanctuary, designed around his preferences, his requirements, his vision of how we should live. Now, viewing it with clear eyes, I realized how little of me had ever been reflected in these rooms. That was about to change. Harrison called around noon with updates. Victoria's bail is set at $50,000. Since all her accounts are frozen, she'll have to find someone else to cover it. What about Kevin? $200,000. Apparently, the judge was unimpressed with his history of financial crimes. Who knew your son-in-law had been under investigation for securities fraud? I certainly hadn't known. But then again, I'd been excluded from most family financial discussions. Victoria and Kevin had always addressed me as if I were a child when money arose, simplifying concepts they assumed I couldn't grasp. They were about to discover how much I had actually understood. Harrison, I want to make some alterations to the house. Victoria had contractors lined up for renovations. I'd like to proceed with some of those plans, but with my own vision. Excellent idea. It's your home now, Margaret. Do whatever brings you joy. What brought me joy, I realized, was the notion of reversing every assumption Victoria had made about my inheritance. She planned to gut the kitchen, replace the hardwood floors, and convert Robert's study into a wine cellar. I was going to transform the study into an art studio and the wine cellar plans into a library. My phone rang. Unknown number. Mrs. Sullivan, this is Janet Cooper from Channel 7 News. We understand you are the victim of a significant elder fraud case involving your daughter. Would you be willing to share your story? Word was spreading. In a city of this magnitude, the arrest of a prominent investment banker and his wife for defrauding his elderly mother-in-law was newsworthy. Miss Cooper, I appreciate your interest, but I am not prepared to make public statements. I understand this must be challenging, but your story could potentially assist other seniors in recognizing warning signs of family financial abuse. She had a valid point. How many other women my age were being manipulated by adult children who viewed them as inconvenient obstacles to inheritance? If I chose to narrate my story, would I have control over its presentation? Absolutely. We could arrange a sit-down interview where you would have approval over the final edit. I considered Victoria, likely confined in a jail cell at that moment, still convinced this was all a misunderstanding she could charm her way out of. Miss Cooper, allow me to get back to you. I might have quite a story to tell. After ending the call, I poured myself a glass of the expensive wine Kevin had sent us for Christmas. Wine I was apparently now savoring in my own house. Purchased with my own money, while contemplating whether to publicly humiliate my daughter on television. Life had undeniably taken an intriguing turn. The doorbell chimed at precisely 7 a.m. Through the window, I could see Victoria on my front porch, clad in yesterday's attire and appearing to have aged 5 years overnight. She had somehow secured bail. I opened the door but did not extend an invitation inside. "Mom, please. We need to converse. We conversed yesterday. You instructed me to find somewhere to perish. I found somewhere to live instead." Victoria's eyes were red-rimmed, her usual flawless composure utterly shattered. "I made errors, terrible errors, but I am still your daughter." "Are you?" "Because daughters do not typically forge legal documents to pilfer their mother's inheritances." "I wasn't stealing. I was—" She paused, clearly struggling to articulate words that weren't incriminating. "You were what, Victoria?" "I was attempting to shield you from making imprudent financial decisions. You've never managed substantial sums of money. Even now, even after being arrested for fraud," she couldn't confess the truth. In Victoria's perception, she remained the victim of my unreasonable expectations. "Victoria, permit me to share something your father conveyed to me 6 months before he passed away. He expressed concern about your sense of entitlement, your attitude toward money, and how you treated individuals you deemed beneath you." Her face paled. "Daddy never said that. He stated you reminded him of his sister Eleanor. Beautiful, charming, and utterly incapable of considering anyone but yourself. He informed me he was amending the will specifically because he feared what you would do to me if you had control." "That's a lie." I extracted my phone and played a voice recording. "Actually, it's not. Your father recorded a video message explaining his decision, to be played if you ever contested the will or if you treated me poorly after his death." Victoria stared at the phone as if it were a venomous snake. "He knew, sweetheart. He knew exactly who you were beneath all that charm. The only thing he didn't foresee was how far you'd truly go." "Play it," she whispered. I touched the screen, and Robert's voice permeated the morning air, clear, measured, and absolutely devastating. "If you are hearing this, Victoria, it signifies that my apprehensions about your character were justified. I hoped I was mistaken. I hoped that my daughter possessed more integrity than I suspected. But if Margaret is playing this recording, it means you've proven me right in the most egregious manner." Victoria collapsed onto the porch steps as Robert's voice continued. "I spent 43 years observing your mother sacrifice her aspirations, her ambitions, her independence to care for our family. She worked part-time jobs to help finance your college while I built my business. She postponed her education, relinquished career opportunities, and dedicated herself to being the wife and mother she believed we required." The recording proceeded for 3 more minutes, each word meticulously chosen, each sentence a scalpel incising Victoria's justifications and self-deceptions. By the time you hear this, you will have discovered that treating your mother poorly has cost you everything. I hope it was worth it. When it concluded, Victoria was weeping. Not the elegant tears she'd utilized to manipulate people since childhood, but raw, broken sobs. "He detested me," she whispered. "No, Victoria, he loved you sufficiently to hope you would prove him wrong. You chose to prove him right instead." She looked up at me, mascara streaking her cheeks. "What happens now? Now you confront the repercussions of your choices. The fraud charges, the investigation, the public humiliation when this story reaches the news." "The news?" "Channel 7 desires to interview me about elder financial abuse. I'm considering accepting." Victoria's face completely crumbled. "Mom, please consider the impact this will have on the grandchildren, on Kevin's career, on our entire family." "I am considering it. I'm considering how you failed to consider any of those things when you opted to commit multiple felonies." She slowly rose, appearing older and more defeated than I had ever witnessed. "I realize you won't believe this, but I never intended for it to escalate this far. I wanted the money. I wanted the security, the status. I wanted to never have to fret about anything again." For the first time since this nightmare commenced, Victoria was speaking the truth. "I believe you, sweetheart, but desiring something does not vindicate destroying people to obtain it." She nodded, tears still flowing. "What can I do to rectify this?" "You can begin by admitting what you did was wrong. Not misguided, not protective, not complicated, wrong. It was wrong. It was completely, unforgivably wrong. And then you can face whatever consequences ensue with some dignity, instead of attempting to manipulate your way out of them." Victoria gazed at me for a prolonged moment. seeing perhaps for the first time not the compliant mother she had always known, but the woman who had just outmaneuvered her completely. I deserved this, didn't I? Yes, Victoria, you absolutely did. 3 days after Victoria's porch confession, Kevin's mother appeared at my door. Eleanor Hayes was everything I had anticipated, immaculately coiffed, adorned with jewelry, and exuding the kind of entitlement that solely stems from 3 generations of inherited wealth. Margaret, we must discuss this situation rationally. I invited her in, intrigued to discover what version of reality the Hayes family had constructed to account for their son's felony charges. Eleanor settled herself in my living room, as if granting me an audience. Kevin made some poor choices, obviously, but prosecuting him seems rather vindictive, don't you think? Vindictive? Your son helped steal my inheritance and ejected me from my own home. Kevin was following Victoria's lead. He didn't comprehend the full situation. The woman was actually attempting to blame my daughter for her son's criminal behavior. I had to admire the audacity. Mrs. Hayes, Kevin created forged legal documents. That's not following someone's lead. That's conspiracy to commit fraud. Kevin's lawyer believes we can achieve a settlement that benefits everyone. You reclaim your house. Victoria faces appropriate consequences, and Kevin avoids the publicity of a trial. Appropriate consequences. As if Victoria's crimes were a minor breach of etiquette. What kind of settlement? Eleanor smiled, clearly convinced she had found an opening. Kevin's family is prepared to compensate you for your inconvenience. Let's say $2 million in exchange for dropping the charges against Kevin. $2 million to forgive the man who had helped steal $33 million from me. Mrs. Hayes, your son participated in a scheme that cost me everything I owned. You believe $2 million covers that? Margaret, be realistic. Kevin has a career, children, a reputation to uphold. Sending him to prison serves no one. It serves justice. Eleanor's polished facade cracked slightly. Justice? You're ruining multiple families over money you would never have known how to manage anyway. There it was. The identical condescending attitude that had poisoned my relationship with Victoria. In their world, I was merely the help who had overstepped. Mrs. Hayes, I believe we are finished here. Margaret, please reconsider. $5 million final offer. $5 million to allow Kevin to walk free. The sum was staggering, but the principle was non-negotiable. My answer is no. Eleanor stood, her composure fully restored. Very well, but you should know that Kevin's legal team has unearthed some interesting information about your husband's business practices. It would be unfortunate if that became public during the trial. The threat was explicit, but I felt no fear, only curiosity. What kind of information? The kind that might make you reconsider who the real criminal in this situation was. After she left, I immediately called Harrison. Margaret, whatever they think they've discovered, it doesn't alter the facts of Victoria and Kevin's crimes. But could it affect the case? Potentially, if they can sufficiently obscure the issue, create doubt about Robert's character or business practices, it might influence a jury. I reflected on Robert, on our marriage, on all the secrets that might be buried in 43 years of shared life. Harrison, I want to know everything about Robert's business. Every deal, every partnership, every potential irregularity. Margaret, are you certain? Sometimes the past is better left undisturbed. The Hayes family is threatening to tarnish Robert's memory to protect their criminal son. I'd prefer to know the truth first. That evening, I sat in Robert's study, my study now, and systematically began examining his files. Robert had been meticulously organized, every document dated and categorized. But as I delved deeper into his business records, I began to find things that didn't quite make sense. Payments to shell companies, consulting fees that seemed excessive, partnerships with firms that appeared to exist only on paper. By midnight, I had uncovered something that redefined everything I believed I knew about my husband. The private investigator Harrison recommended was a sharp-eyed woman named Carol Chen, who specialized in financial crimes. She spent 6 hours in Robert's study, photographing documents and constructing what she called the real picture of my husband's business empire. Mrs. Sullivan, your husband was operating a sophisticated money laundering operation through his consulting firm. We're talking about millions of dollars in illegal transactions over the past decade. The revelation struck me with physical force. That's impossible. Robert was the most honest man I knew. I'm sorry, but the evidence is overwhelming. He was washing money for organized crime families, utilizing his legitimate business as a front. I stared at the documents spread across Robert's desk. Invoices for services never rendered, consulting contracts with companies that didn't exist, payment schedules that corresponded with known criminal activities. How long has this been occurring? Based on these records, at least 12 years, probably longer. 12 years. While I was orchestrating dinner parties and attending charity galas, my husband was facilitating criminal enterprises. Mrs. Sullivan, there's more. The $10 million Robert bequeathed to Victoria, that money originated directly from laundered funds. If the FBI uncovers this, they'll seize everything as proceeds of criminal activity. The room began to spin. Everything? The house? The investments? All of it? Unless, Carol looked uncomfortable, unless Victoria and Kevin's legal team already knows about this and is planning to exploit it as leverage. If they tip off the FBI about your husband's crimes, they might be able to negotiate immunity in exchange for cooperation. My daughter and her husband weren't just thieves. They were holding a nuclear weapon over my head. What are my options? Legally, you could contact the FBI yourself, come forward voluntarily, and hope for leniency. You'd lose most of the money, but you might retain the house. And if I don't? Victoria and Kevin's lawyers will probably leak this information strategically. You'll lose everything anyway, but you'll also face potential charges for unknowingly benefiting from criminal activity. I thought about Eleanor Hayes's smug confidence, her certainty that I would accept their settlement offer. They had known about Robert's crimes all along. Carol, how did they discover this? Kevin's an investment banker. He would have recognized the patterns in your husband's financial records. The question is, what are they planning to do with this information? My phone rang. Victoria's number. Mom, we need to meet tonight. There are things you need to know about Daddy that change everything. I already know, Victoria. Silence. Then you know what? I know about the money laundering. I know about the criminal connections. I know that everything your father left us is tainted. Mom, listen to me carefully. Kevin's lawyers have been in contact with the FBI. They're willing to let us renegotiate our situation. What kind of renegotiation? Kevin obtains immunity in exchange for providing information about Daddy's criminal network. You get to keep $5 million in the house. The rest goes to the government. And you, the fraud charges disappear. We all walk away from this mess. It was brilliant in a sociopathic way. Victoria had transformed my moral victory into her strategic advantage. Victoria, you're asking me to help you profit from your crimes by exploiting Daddy's crimes. I'm asking you to be practical. The alternative is losing everything and potentially facing charges yourself. I surveyed Robert's study, seeing it clearly for the first time. The expensive furniture, the rare books, the art collection, all of it acquired with blood money. I need time to think. Mom, the FBI meeting is tomorrow morning. Kevin's lawyer requires an answer tonight. After hanging up, I sat in the darkness of Robert's study, surrounded by the evidence of his double life. 43 years of marriage to a stranger, a daughter who had inherited more than money from her father. She had inherited his talent for deception, but she had made one crucial error. She had underestimated who I was when my back was against the wall. I picked up the phone and dialed Carol Chen. Carol, how swiftly can you arrange a meeting with the FBI for me? I have a story to tell them, and I believe they are going to find it very compelling. FBI agent Sarah Martinez perfectly embodied Central Casting's ideal federal investigator. Serious, intelligent, and completely immune to charm. She sat across from me in Harrison's conference room. When my daughter Victoria heartlessly commanded me to find a new place to die, declaring me obsolete, I packed my belongings, just as I'd always done as her compliant mother. 3 days later, I found myself in a lawyer's office, unraveling the shocking truth that my supposedly loving husband had orchestrated the most intricate, long-game chess match imaginable. Victoria was about to discover that a mere pawn can indeed transform into a queen. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know your location. Allow me to recount my journey from being a displaced widow to the woman holding absolute power. Because, darling, This narrative is more convoluted than a labyrinth. Just 2 months prior, I was Margaret Sullivan, a devoted wife of 43 years and mother to an exceptionally ungrateful daughter. When Robert, at 71, succumbed to a heart attack, I genuinely believed my world had ended. Victoria descended upon my grief like a designer-clad predator, murmuring platitudes about my suffering. "Mother, you simply cannot manage this vast house alone," she'd asserted, her voice laced with feigned empathy. "The stairs, the upkeep, all those memories. It's detrimental to your health." I should have discerned the manipulative intent behind her feigned concern. Victoria had always been Robert's adored child, his infallible princess. Upon her marriage to the investment banker, Kevin, and the subsequent arrival of grandchildren, Robert showered them all with affection. Meanwhile, I remained merely the individual who cooked, cleaned, and ensured everything ran seamlessly. Following the funeral, Victoria's insistence on my living situation intensified. She'd bring Kevin over for family dinners, where they'd corner me with real estate flyers and retirement community brochures. "Mom, these places are wonderful." You'd have peers your own age, engaging activities, no responsibilities. What they truly implied was no inheritance to divide, no inconvenient mother to contend with. The decisive blow landed last Tuesday. For 6 weeks since Robert's passing, I'd been residing in what Victoria now referred to as our house, still occupying the guest room, unable to face dismantling our marital bedroom. Victoria arrived unannounced with Kevin and 2 substantial suitcases. "Mom, we've reached a decision. Kevin received a promotion, and we need to relocate to the city immediately. This house is ideal for us." I gazed at her, struggling to comprehend. "Move in." "But this is my home." Victoria's facade momentarily fractured, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "Actually, Mom, according to Dad's will, I inherited everything. The house, the investments, all of it. I've permitted you to stay here out of benevolence, but it's time for you to secure your own residence." The word struck me with physical force. "Victoria, surely there's been some misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding. Dad understood I would manage his legacy more effectively than you ever could. You never grasped finances or investments. You were just the wife, just the wife." 43 years of marriage reduced to those 3 devastating words. Then came the final brutal pronouncement. "Find somewhere else to die. You're useless now." I packed my possessions in a daze. 43 years of matrimony compressed into 2 suitcases and a small box of photographs. Victoria observed from the doorway, checking her watch as if my departure was inconveniencing her. "There's a pleasant senior complex on Maple Street," she offered, with the enthusiasm of someone recommending a mediocre eatery. "Very affordable. I'm certain they have vacancies. Affordable." My daughter was inheriting $33 million, yet she was directing me to what amounted to a subsidized facility for the elderly. Kevin efficiently loaded my suitcases into their BMW, like someone disposing of refuse. "Margaret, you'll relish your newfound independence," he stated, avoiding eye contact. No more concerns about house maintenance or property taxes. No more home, he meant. As we drove away, I watched my house, Robert's house, now Victoria's house, vanish in the rearview mirror. The irony was not lost on me. I had devoted 4 decades to transforming that house into a home, hosting Victoria's birthday celebrations, nursing Robert through his illness, meticulously maintaining every detail he cherished. Now, I was being chauffeured to a budget motel like an unwelcome guest who had overstayed her welcome. The Sunset Inn was precisely what one would anticipate from a place charging $49 a night. Thin walls, even thinner towels, and carpeting that had undoubtedly witnessed better decades. Victoria handed me $200 in cash as if I were a hotel maid. "This should sustain you for a few days while you get settled," she said. "Kevin will transfer some funds into your account once we organize Dad's paperwork. Some money from my own inheritance." After they departed, I sat on the sagging mattress, attempting to process the recent events. In the span of 3 hours, I had transformed from a grieving widow into a displaced senior citizen. The woman I had raised, loved, and sacrificed for had discarded me like an expired prescription. But as I sat there in that bleak motel room, a persistent thought began to trouble me. Robert had always been fastidious about his affairs, obsessively organized regarding important documents. He had shown me his will years ago, explaining his intentions, ensuring I understood everything. And I was absolutely certain that's not what it had stated. Robert had been many things: traditional, occasionally stubborn, sometimes condescending about financial matters, but he was not cruel. The man who had held my hand during my mother's passing, who had surprised me with flowers every anniversary, would not have left me destitute. The following morning, I utilized the motel's Wi-Fi to locate Robert's attorney, Harrison Fitzgerald, the same lawyer who had handled our home purchase and various business dealings over the years. His office was downtown, a 20-minute bus ride that consumed precious cash but felt essential. Harrison Fitzgerald was a distinguished man in his 70s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. When his secretary announced that Mrs. Sullivan was there regarding her husband's estate, he appeared genuinely surprised. "Margaret, my dear, I was wondering when you'd arrive. I attempted to contact your house several times, but Victoria stated you were traveling." "Traveling?" That's what my daughter had told him. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I need to inquire about Robert's will." He looked perplexed. "Of course. Didn't Victoria provide you with your copy?" I furnished her with the original and several copies after the reading. My stomach plummeted. "There was a reading? Margaret, you were supposed to be present. Victoria claimed you were too distraught, that she would manage everything and guarantee you received your inheritance." The blood drained from my face as the truth dawned on me. "Mr. Fitzgerald, I was never informed about any reading. Victoria told me she inherited everything." Harrison Fitzgerald's expression shifted from bewilderment to alarm. He reached for a thick file folder, his movements suddenly urgent. "Margaret, that's impossible. Your husband's will is exceedingly precise about your inheritance." He extracted a document. I recognized Robert's neat signature at the bottom, witnessed and notarized. But as Harrison began to read, I realized Victoria had fabricated everything. I, Robert James Sullivan, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath to my beloved wife, Margaret Ann Sullivan, the following: our primary residence at 847 Oakwood Drive, including all furnishings and personal effects. Additionally, I leave her 70% of all financial assets, investments, and accounts, totaling approximately $23 million. My head began to spin. $23 million. The house. 70% of everything. Harrison continued reading, his voice growing more somber. "To my daughter, Victoria Sullivan Hayes, I leave $10 million to be held in trust with distributions commencing on her 45th birthday, contingent upon her treatment of her mother following my death." Contingent upon her treatment of me. Robert had known. Somehow, he had known precisely what Victoria would attempt to do. "Mr. Fitzgerald," I whispered. "Victoria told me I inherited nothing. She moved into my house. She gave me $200 and suggested I find a senior facility." The elderly lawyer's face flushed with anger. "Margaret, what Victoria has done is classified as elder abuse and fraud. She's committed multiple felonies. But she possessed legal documents. She showed me papers. Forged, most likely, or documents from an earlier draft. Your husband revised his will 6 months before his death, specifically because he was concerned about Victoria's attitude toward money and her sense of entitlement. The room was swirling. All those occasions Victoria had dismissed my opinions, talked over me during family dinners, rolled her eyes when I attempted to contribute to conversations about their extravagant vacations or Kevin's business deals. Robert had been observing, evaluating, making decisions. There's more, Margaret. The trust provision for Victoria specifically states that if she fails to treat you with respect and dignity following my death, the entire $10 million reverts to you instead. I stared at him in disbelief. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying your daughter just cost herself $10 million. Her inheritance is now yours as well. You're not inheriting $23 million, Margaret. You're inheriting $33 million, plus the house and all personal property." The irony was so exquisite, it was almost comical. Victoria had been so eager to claim her inheritance that she had activated the very clause designed to safeguard me from her avarice.